am the river, and the river is me. This is an incredible mantra that is famous in New Zealand for a campaign that helped find legal rights of personhood for a river. This is the connection and the power between nature and people in this beautiful land that I grew up in. In New Zealand, I was really honored to be able to grow up barefoot and playing in the rivers and swimming in this tapestry of fresh, clean water with wildlife and creatures everywhere. And it empowered me to feel that this was how the world should be. And I went through my whole life believing this. And, as life happens, we go through, life changes, passions, missions, jobs, things, roadblocks. Life happens to all of us. But at some point, I found myself working for Amazon AWS. I don't know how, but I was on the deep learning team. I went to give a talk back in New Zealand. I was so honored. I was being chosen to be a keynote speaker back in New Zealand. And when I went back, I gave this whole speech about artificial intelligence and how it was going to help save the world. And one morning while I was there, I was sipping my coffee and I read an article that said that 60% of New Zealand's rivers were actually contaminated and polluted to a level that was unsafe for humans. This struck something in me that was just unacceptable. We can't just look at facts and figures like this and think, oh, what a shame, and move on as if nothing else has happened. It wasn't long after that I decided to start my own nonprofit in working in tech for climate initiatives, but I was still very focused on working with wildlife. When I was a child, my mentor was Jane Goodall. So I grew up on this tiny, beautiful island, seeing lions and hearing about our closest relatives, the chimpanzees. And I had to go. I really had to go. I was so passionate about this. When I set out to work with wildlife, I thought this was my childhood dream. And as I started working with wildlife, I realized it's not really the best way to support wildlife by just saying, I'm going to help this animal or that animal. What was it that they really needed in order to be supported? And so I realized, well, they need wildlife connectivity. This is something that's missing. The forests are being destroyed and taken away, these farmlands, agricultural lands, on and on. There were so many issues. And so I went back to school. I realized I didn't know enough to be able to have the impact that I set out to have in my youth. I went back to Harvard University, online classes, which was an amazing way to be able to work and be a mother and be able to do school all at the same time. And I learned not only about wildlife connectivity, land conservation, sustainability projects, working in development, how we can support humanity as well as nature at the same time, working in things like natural capital, trying to find out how we have the actual finances to support these initiatives that fund us, the water that makes us all survive, the trees that we live and breathe from. And it was through Harvard University that I realized wetlands actually sequester 30% of the world's carbon, while forests that we know of and that we think of at carbon, wetlands are disappearing 3 times faster than forests are. It's a weird thing, these wetlands. We never think much about what's like a bog, it's a swamp, it's a mangrove. We don't think much about wetlands anymore. But it's time we start thinking about wetlands. Wetlands have 6% of the world's coverage, yet they support 40% of the world's biodiversity. How better can I support wildlife? How better can I help support those rivers that I grew up in? And so as I started to find my way with my company, we became one of the first organizations to really develop a roadmap and a strategic plan with a 6-step method on being able not only to help support current wetlands, but to also reconstruct successful and long-term sustainable wetlands utilizing technology such as geospatial technology or artificial intelligence. But the number one thing that helps the most is our collaboration with local and indigenous communities. Because no matter what data or facts we have in life, the integration of local knowledge cannot be beat. So I'm really honored to be able to work in these local and indigenous communities to honor my background coming from New Zealand and our local indigenous Maori community. But also, most importantly, I still think about things like my mentor, Jane Goodall. She is famous for saying the greatest threat to our future is apathy. Apathy is something that we see every day. We are recognizing it in the way our governments act and how we see children being raised today. We need to focus more in on our empathy and what is supporting us in nature. You know, I had no idea as a child coming from New Zealand that I would ever end up working in the Silicon Valley or traveling the world. And I certainly never thought that these playgrounds of the tapestry of wild rivers and wetlands that I grew up catching eels in and playing in would have such a big part of my life. These wetlands are an incredible adventure that has led me all over the world to building these wetlands, watching and calculating their impact, their growth, even in places like Saudi Arabia, desert lands, fruitful lands like Costa Rica, and being able to work back to bring back those beautiful rivers. That's 60% of river contamination in New Zealand. I'm incredibly grateful for the opportunities that I have had and the life that has led me to where I live. And I know that the passion matched with action is what is going to make a difference in our world today.